Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds spent years building the perfect Hollywood power couple image. Two A-list stars dominating the box office while showcasing a flawless family life. But that carefully crafted illusion is unraveling fast. Their biggest allies, once vocal supporters, are now stepping away in record numbers, leaving the duo isolated just when they need backing the most. The harshest blow came from Taylor Swift. For years, Blake and Taylor flaunted their friendship. Holidays together, public shout-outs, even family cameos. But now Swift is distancing herself completely. Reports surfaced that Justin Baldoni's legal team planned to subpoena Swift in Blake's lawsuit after Blake allegedly name-dropped Taylor behind the scenes to intimidate industry figures. According to insiders, Swift was blindsided and furious. She had no idea her name was being dragged into legal filings. For someone as protective of her image as Swift, the silence that followed was deafening. No Instagram posts, no statements, no support, just calculated distance. And Swift isn't the only one. Blake's co-star Brandon Sklenar, who shared the spotlight with her in It Ends With Us, dodged questions when pressed about the lawsuit. His silence was telling. In Hollywood, loyalty is everything. If he truly believed her claims, why wouldn't he defend her? Instead, his refusal to take sides reinforced the growing perception that nobody wants to be tied to Blake Lively's legal storm. The backlash extends to Ryan as well. One of the most humiliating moments of his career came at the Oscars when Deadpool made a surprise cameo. Normally, such a stunt would get roaring applause. This time, silence. The lack of enthusiasm sent a brutal message. Reynolds' once untouchable charm was fading, and Hollywood was no longer laughing with him. Even his business ventures are taking hits. Reynolds' aviation gin, once aggressively promoted in films and partnerships, was quietly swapped out in a project starring his own wife. Instead, director Paul Feig's gin brand was featured. It wasn't random, it was a deliberate choice, signaling that industry figures are keeping Ryan at arm's length. For a couple who thrived on optics, this is catastrophic. Hollywood loyalty only lasts as long as you're profitable. Once public opinion sours, brand deals, partnerships, and friendships vanish. And right now, both Blake and Ryan are facing a tidal wave of skepticism, criticism, and distancing from the very circles that once propped them up. What's most dangerous for them is that this doesn't feel like a temporary scandal. The silence from Swift's camp, the hesitation of co-stars, the industry turning its back, all point to something larger. Their carefully curated image is collapsing, replaced with narratives of hypocrisy, manipulation, and opportunism. Unless something drastic changes, this isn't just a bad news cycle. It's the beginning of a permanent stain on their reputations, one that even Hollywood's most powerful PR teams may not be able to erase. Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds for years were considered the golden couple of Hollywood. They had the image, the charm, the box office hits, and the kind of marriage that looked unshakable. Together, they built a brand so powerful that fans, studios, and even fellow celebrities treated them as if they were untouchable. Blake was the queen of elegance. Ryan was the witty king of comedy and superhero blockbusters, and together they became a power duo who seemed immune to the pitfalls that swallowed so many other celebrity couples. But as history often shows us, the bigger the image, the harder the fall. And right now, what we are seeing with Blake and Ryan is not just a small stumble, not just a minor controversy, but a collapse of epic proportions, with layers of betrayal, manipulation, lawsuits, awkward Hollywood silences, and even the crumbling of once unbreakable friendships. What started as whispers behind the scenes has exploded into full-blown headlines, dragging in names like Taylor Swift, Justin Baldoni, and even major Hollywood studios that once bent over backwards to work with them. It all began, quietly enough, with Blake Lively's increasingly controversial behavior on set. According to multiple reports, Blake began crossing boundaries far outside the normal role of an actress. With Ryan's support, she was allegedly rewriting scenes, exerting control over creative decisions, and clashing with directors and producers who questioned her influence. For many in the industry, this wasn't just unprofessional, it was intimidating. Blake wasn't simply giving notes, she was positioning herself as the final authority. In text messages revealed in the latest lawsuit involving Justin Baldoni, she even compared herself to Daenerys Targaryen, boasting about her power and threatening consequences for those who didn't comply. When an actress begins sending messages like, "I'm Khaleesi and my dragons and I will crush you unless I get my way," it stops being playful banter and starts sounding like intimidation. Hollywood insiders were left asking, was this the Real Blake Lively, hidden for years behind a carefully polished image? Ryan Reynolds, instead of pulling back, reportedly stood firmly by her side, reinforcing her authority. The problem is, in doing so, Ryan wasn't just supporting his wife privately, he was enabling behavior that alienated colleagues, co-stars, and even allies who had once been their strongest champions. And that brings us to Taylor Swift. For years, Blake and Taylor were inseparable. Social media was filled with snapshots of holidays together, Instagram captions dripping with affection, and the kind of friendship that made fans swoon. To many, it looked like an unbreakable bond. Two women at the top of their respective industries, fiercely loyal to one another. But when Justin Baldoni's legal team prepared to subpoena Taylor Swift, alleging that Blake had been name-dropping her in private and using her influence as leverage in the lawsuit, everything changed. Taylor Swift was blindsided. According to TMZ and multiple other outlets, she had no idea Blake was invoking her name in such high-stakes legal matters. For Taylor, whose public image relies heavily on control and precision, this was the ultimate betrayal. Imagine being one of the world's biggest pop stars, only to discover your so-called best friend was dragging your name into legal mud without your knowledge or consent. Taylor's reaction was swift and telling. She did nothing. No Instagram posts of support, no carefully worded PR statement, no subtle gestures of loyalty. Nothing. For a woman who is famous for defending her friends publicly and clapping back at anyone who dares to wrong them, her silence was deafening. In Hollywood, silence is never neutral. It is a message. And in this case, the message was clear. Taylor Swift was cutting Blake Lively loose. The ripple effects were immediate. Blake's co-stars, like Brandon Sklenar from It Ends With Us, were suddenly cagey when asked about her. Instead of defending her, instead of standing by her side, Brandon dodged questions, gave vague non-answers, and let the silence speak volumes. In an industry where loyalty is everything, especially during public scandals, his unwillingness to support Blake was seen as cowardice at best and confirmation at worst. If Blake's own co-star wasn't willing to risk his reputation by standing with her, what did that say about the validity of her claims? Hollywood insiders began whispering that Blake had pushed too far, that her diva behavior had finally caught up with her, and that no one wanted to be dragged down alongside her. And then there's Ryan Reynolds. For years, he was the beloved Joker of Hollywood, the man behind Deadpool, the king of self-deprecating humor. Audiences loved him not just for his movies, but for his charisma. But even his shine is beginning to wear off. At the Oscars, during what should have been a lighthearted cameo, Ryan appeared in full Deadpool gear. Normally, such a stunt would have brought the house down with applause. Instead, there was silence. Awkward, painful silence. In an industry built on adoration, the lack of enthusiasm wasn't just embarrassing, it was a warning sign. Ryan Reynolds, the man who could once do no wrong, was suddenly being met with indifference. And Hollywood indifference is deadly. When applause turns to silence, when laughter turns to awkward stares, it's not just about one bad joke. It's about perception. It's about the collective decision of an industry that thrives on public favor deciding that maybe, just maybe, you're not worth the risk anymore. That perception hit Ryan's business ventures too. His beloved aviation gin, which he has, promoted tirelessly and turned into a symbol of his entrepreneurial spirit, was suddenly replaced in a movie starring his own wife. Instead of aviation gin, Paul Feig's gin was featured. On the surface, it might look like a small detail, but in Hollywood, product placement is everything. This wasn't an accident. It was a choice to keep Ryan's brand out of the spotlight, a choice to distance the industry from his controversies, and a choice that signaled where things were headed. The domino effect is brutal. Once cracks appear in a celebrity's image, sponsors, studios, and friends start to pull away. Not because they suddenly developed a moral compass, but because Hollywood loyalty only lasts as long as you're profitable. And right now, with lawsuits piling up, friends distancing themselves, and public opinion turning sour, Blake and Ryan are looking less like Hollywood royalty and more like liabilities. The scariest part? This might just be the beginning. Every day, more details are leaking. Text messages, behind-the-scenes accounts, awkward red carpet silences. The industry is beginning to realize that the perfect facade of Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds was just that, a facade. And when that mask slips, when the truth begins to seep out, it doesn't just threaten their next project. It threatens their entire legacy. Hollywood is brutal in this way. It builds up its stars, worships them, treats them as icons, and then, when the tide turns, it tears them down mercilessly. For Blake and Ryan, the tide has turned. Taylor Swift's silence was the first domino. Brandon Sklenar's refusal to stand by Blake was another. The Oscars' awkward silence was another. Aviation Gin being swapped out was another. Each moment, small on its own, combines to form a much bigger picture. Hollywood is moving on. The very industry that once treated them as untouchable is now preparing to leave them behind. And if things continue on this trajectory, Blake and Ryan's story won't be remembered as one of Hollywood's great love stories. It will be remembered as a cautionary tale of how arrogance, manipulation, and the misuse of friendships can unravel even the most carefully built empire. Right now, Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds are standing at the edge of a cliff, and Hollywood is watching to see if they fall. Ryan Reynolds has spent years carefully building a reputation as the charming, laid-back, witty guy of Hollywood. The funny husband, the relatable star, the ultimate good guy actor who could do no wrong. But leaked text messages and newly surfaced legal filings are pulling the curtain back on that image, and what they reveal is deeply disturbing. Behind the jokes and self-deprecating humor lies a man who appears to be obsessively insecure, controlling, and determined to manage every single aspect of his wife Blake Lively's professional life. What looks like a fairy tale marriage from the outside now appears far darker when viewed through the lens of desperation, manipulation, and paranoia. It all came to light during the chaos surrounding It Ends With Us, the film now at the center of Hollywood's biggest scandal in years. Most husbands would be proud to see their wife take on a highly anticipated role, stepping into the spotlight in a project with huge buzz. But for Ryan, Blake's starring role wasn't a reason to celebrate. It was a threat. It meant Blake would be spending months away from him, working closely with director Justin Baldoni, and operating outside of Ryan's direct control. And according to the messages that surfaced, he simply couldn't handle that. The texts are astonishing. Ryan repeatedly begged Justin Baldoni to shift the film's production schedule so it wouldn't interfere with his own commitments. He claimed he had tried to move Deadpool and Wolverine around but couldn't. So instead of accepting reality, he turned to Baldoni and demanded he change his schedule. This wasn't a casual request. It was frantic. It was relentless. He guilt-tripped, manipulated, and pushed, making it sound like his marriage couldn't survive unless Blake's work revolved around him. And then came the most bizarre revelation of all. In one of those desperate pleas, Ryan actually offered to tattoo his perineum, yes, the area between his genitals and anus, if Baldoni would just change the production dates. Think about how extreme, how obsessive that is. Who offers to permanently mark one of the most sensitive areas of their body just to keep their wife from being away for work? That isn't romance. That isn't devotion. That's control. It's desperation. And it paints Ryan not as the lovable jokester fans adore, but as a man so consumed by insecurity that he can't bear the thought of Blake being out of his orbit. But his obsession didn't end with filming schedules. Sources allege Ryan actively manipulated Blake's career trajectory to ensure she was always tethered to him. He reportedly pushed to align her projects with his, deliberately preventing her from taking on opportunities that would keep them apart for too long. This wasn't coincidence. It was a pattern. A calculated system of control disguised as marital support. Even the public image of Blake's career, especially when negative press started swirling around her performance in It Ends With Us, became another battlefield. Instead of allowing her PR team to manage the criticism, Ryan allegedly took over himself. In fact, leaked filings suggest that Ryan and Blake went so far as to draft a full statement and demand Justin Baldoni's team and Wayfarer Studios publish it. The statement read like an attempt to gaslight the public, shifting all blame for the film's troubled production onto Baldoni and his studio, while portraying Blake as the innocent professional who had done no wrong. Ryan wanted Baldoni's team to shoulder all the responsibility for the negative coverage, and he expected them to comply without question. But Baldoni's camp refused. They saw the statement for what it was, an outrageous manipulation attempt designed to protect Blake and rewrite the truth. That refusal marked a major turning point. It exposed just how far Ryan was willing to go to manage not only Blake's work life, but also her reputation. And when that failed, Ryan and Blake doubled down, escalating their efforts through the press. Headlines in outlets like the Daily Mail and Page Six suddenly leaned heavily in Blake's favor, raising questions about whether Ryan had leveraged his powerful media contacts to keep his wife's image polished while discrediting Baldoni. The irony is brutal. For years, Ryan Reynolds positioned himself as the Hollywood outsider, the actor who mocked the system, who poked fun at PR spin, who seemed to roll his eyes at Hollywood fakery. Yet here he was, orchestrating the very games he claimed to despise. He wasn't just supporting Blake, he was controlling the entire narrative, reshaping events to protect her while ensuring he remained the puppet master behind the curtain. But the public isn't blind. The more the messages circulated, the more the stories leaked. The more Ryan's supportive husband act began to look like something far darker, obsessive control masked as loyalty. The desperation in his texts, the bizarre tattoo promise, the behind-the-scenes PR manipulation. It all paints a picture of a man who couldn't stomach the thought of his wife existing professionally outside of his control. And that leaves Hollywood, and the public, asking the same chilling question. If Ryan Reynolds is willing to go this far in texts, emails, and public power plays, what does that say about what goes on privately behind closed doors? The cracks in their power couple facade are no longer whispers. They are gaping holes. And if Ryan and Blake cannot control the narrative anymore, their downfall may not just be inevitable. It may already be happening. And that's where things stand right now. The image of Hollywood's golden couple is cracking in real time, and what's slipping through isn't pretty. Ryan Reynolds' charm, Blake Lively's grace, the picture-perfect marriage, all of it looks a lot less like a fairy tale and a lot more like a carefully staged performance. The leaks, the manipulation, the desperation, it's all out in the open now, and the question isn't whether more will come out. It's how much worse it can get. Because in Hollywood, the truth always finds its way to the surface, no matter how hard you try to bury it. So what do you think? Is Ryan Reynolds just a devoted husband trying to protect his wife? Or has his obsession crossed the line into something far more disturbing? Drop your thoughts in the comments because this is one story that's only just beginning.